What's up guys, this is Anime Crossover. I'm back with a new episode of What If Naruto Went Through Marvel Universe, part 16. And if you did enjoy this video, give this video a like and opinion my channel, and like my content, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more crossover fictions. Now let's begin this new video.
Chapter 18. Past sins. The brown-haired man groaned blissfully as his eyes opened after waking up after one of the nicest night's sleep he'd had in months, being careful not to awaken the heavy weight on his chest. Mary Jane Watson Parker, his gorgeous wife with her characteristic red hair. He couldn't blame his wife for being in the comforts of deep slumber after a great night for their wedding anniversary, with the extra activities they participated in for 3 hours straight. Peter was also relieved that he and Mary Jane were reunited. Everything returned to normal on Christmas Eve, albeit with some alterations in their way of life. Peter had taken off his suit after Spider-Man returned from his night patrol around Manhattan when he opened the door and found his wife standing in the hallway. He hadn't said anything until she clutched him firmly and whispered, "I love you," into his ears. Mary Jane had to calm her husband down after telling him about the burglars who tried to harm her in an alley. Peter only calmed down when he learned that Patronus had come to her help and saved his wife, despite the fact that he had been hurled across Manhattan like a football. Peter used his spider-like reflexes and speed to slip out of his wife's grip as he walked to the kitchen to make breakfast for them both. Peter recalled one of his chats with his wife, primarily concerning his superhero duties, while he prepared an omelet, bacon, and a side of hash browns. His other life as Spider-Man strained their marriage, whether Mary Jane was dumped on one of their dates, Peter returned home injured, or his adversaries preyed on either of them to make the arachnid-themed hero pay for his involvement. Like any other married couple, they reached an agreement to help mend their love for each other. No harrowing on date nights, birthdays, and anniversaries, as well as weekends. When Peter questioned his wife if someone had planted this thought in her head, Mary Jane replied, "Not telling you," and his mind raced back to a certain cloaked hero stationed in Boston. Patronus most likely had something to do with it, Peter groaned, pondering the compromise. "But she's right, I take my responsibility too seriously, but I feel obligated to honor my uncle's memory." He exhaled deeply. "I must try." For MJ, he replied, his gaze fixed on his bedroom door. "I can't lose her again." "Talking to yourself, Mr. Parker." "Actually yes," Peter replied as he looked at the laptop next to him. "Did you shut yourself off when the missus and I knocked boots?" "Of course, Mr. Parker, you taught me to be better than that. And it was well worth it." Peter wanted to do something more to improve his game as Spider-Man during his divorce and between his heroics. He created an AI based on an algorithm he invented while at Empire University, but it never gained popularity owing to his superhero life and the tragedies that came with it. Now he does thanks to his new position at Horizon's lab, where he was hired directly by Max Module after the latter read one of his thesis papers at university. He used the riches of his new employment to create technologies that would benefit both humanity and his hero life. "And I thank you for giving me life, Mr. Parker, although not in the traditional sense, of course." Now, Karen," Peter retorted to his AI's clearly feminine voice. "Any updates in Manhattan or globally?" Crime rates in Manhattan had lowered to 3% in the last month alone since the Avengers' tangle with Kong. "I can't believe I missed that." Peter brought his Aunt May on a family trip to Pennsylvania, though they handled it without me. "And with Patronus, I might add," Karen responded amusingly, infuriating her creator even more. Globally, S.H.I.E.L.D. Director Fury attended a summit meeting in Brussels. "Oh, and Peter gave her top-tier hacking talents capable of infiltrating government agencies." "I see. Anything else? Your Mosk's lenses need to be updated for your HUD so I can aid you in your patrols and such." "Thanks for the reminder. Also, the Adams House Grill called last night and confirmed your reservations for 8 p.m. tonight." "Again, thanks for the reminder." In the early years of their marriage, Peter would either miss or be late for dinner dates, but now he can. And done. Peter completed breakfast and set it on a dish with a little flower vase before heading to his room. "Karen, remind me to finish building the wrist computer too." "Of course, Mr. Parker." Peter came to a halt in front of his bedroom door and examined his laptop. "And Karen?" "Going to sleep now." Peter then opened the door and entered the room where Mary Jane had just awoken, smiling as she carefully pushed aside the blanket to display her wonderful physique and generous breasts. "Good morning, Tigers," the redhead said to her husband and his friend from beneath his drawers. "Good morning," Peter said as he closed the door behind him with his leg. For the first time in a long time, the Parkers' bedrooms soon became a symphony of moans and swear words directed at one another. TTIIPMXTTIIPMXTTIIPM Brooklyn, Rhea, for the last time, I heard you. I'm not going to mess up the order. That's what you said last time, and I apologized. Several times. Naruto argued before calming himself down. I'll buy 3 of them this time. How about that? Rhea smiled and said, I approve. See you when you get home. Love you. Bye, Naruto said before quietly jumping off the roof and landing in the alley with no witnesses. Because the ninja was in town to assist Boston and New York police with a prisoner extradition, his wives requested that he pick up some excellent cheesecakes from a Brooklyn bakery. He was already dressed in civilian clothing at this point. Hey there, Mei, he exclaimed as he entered the bakery. Naruto, my dear, Mei said as the blonde adult approached the counter. How are you? Oh fine, you? Blessed to be living considering my age. Naruto ignored the sentence. That just means you're one strong lady, Mei. Thank you, Mei exclaimed, flexing her right bicep to emphasize the ninja's assertion. This is thanks to raising my nephew. Naruto laughed as he shook his head. I still can't believe you and your husband did that considering your ag. He came to a halt when Mei stared him down. I mean, you and your husband are just such good people. Naruto met Mei Parker via Patronus in January after the latter stopped a robbery in Boston. The old Parker was in his town for a holiday with her nephew, but they became separated after the baseball game at Fenway Ballpark, which Naruto also attended as a civilian. He tracked her down and conversed with her until her nephew, Peter, arrived to take her home. Naruto felt like he was conversing with his grandma, therefore he wanted to learn more about her. Mei also thought Naruto was her grandson and wished to speak with him in the future. She told him about her Queen's Bakery, and they've been talking anytime Naruto was in town for her amazing cheesecake or some other business he had. How are your sisters? Mei inquired of Naruto's wives. He had mentioned living with numerous girls in a large house, and Naruto couldn't tell her about being married to 1, let alone 5, and having 2 children. They're fine, though my niece and nephew are getting more riled up lately, was the truth this time, or at least a half-truth. I'm not sure why, they weren't this fuzzy when I left for work before, Naruto inquired. Mei, do you know why? Mei sighed and shrugged. I raised Peter when he was 5 years old and the twins are 1 year old, Naruto said with a grin. So, my area of expertise begins around the age of 5, she chuckled, her face as sunken as Naruto's. I guess you could change your schedule so you can be home more often. Do you think I should? It is just my opinion and advice. I'll think about it, Naruto answered as the bag-covered cheesecake boxes slid over the counter to him, his eyes beaming like a child. Yes, so, the total, Mei said, and Naruto paid the bill before grabbing the bag's handle. See you later, Mei. Tell your nephew and his wife I said, hi. Will do. Stay safe, young man. Likewise. TTIIPMXTTIIPMXTTIIPM. Manhattan's Midtown, oh, Mary Jane muttered as she ran across the streets in heels to catch the bus, only to have the vehicle leave her behind. Damn it, Peter's never going to let me hear the end of this. Of all nights to be late, it was the worst. Damn that photographer. I swear it felt like he was taking way more photos than usual. The beautiful girl had a photo shoot for a film she auditioned for in Los Angeles, and luckily for her, the shoot was taking place in Boston at the time Patronus saved her from the thugs. The premiere is 1 week tonight, which is why Peter and I are having dinner. It was his way of complimenting her on her profession after multiple setbacks. Mary Jane was proud of her husband's advancement in the world after being hired by Horizon Labs. His ideas and technologies help the world today, such as the police and medical hospitals. Ah, taxi. Mary Jane exclaimed as the approaching yellow vehicle came to a stop in front of her. Oh, thank goodness, she said as she got inside the car and shut the door while the driver waited for her. Adam's House Grill. Gotcha, Mary Jane said, pulling out her makeup box to make herself even more attractive for her husband. Who's the lucky man? Just someone special. He takes care of you. Of course. Mary Jane felt a little strange conversing with the cab driver, but she didn't mind. If you don't mind me saying, miss, you're very pretty. Thank you. The cab driver shook his head in disbelief at her reply. Sorry for being direct, but I tell as it is. That's a good trait, Mary Jane said, looking out the window as the driver's hand clutched the wheel tighter. Not a lot people has that. Does that include you? Now things were getting strange and dangerous for Spider-Man's wife, and her senses were warning her to flee. You can drop me off here, Mary Jane said to the driver as she waited for him to stop the cab, but he didn't, which worried her. Seriously, stop the cab. The cab skidded to a halt, and she dashed to the adjoining park, where the restaurant was on the other side. Freaks everywhere. That's not nice of you. She whirled around to see a man she hadn't seen in years. He was taller than she was, with light brown hair, a slightly muscular body, and green eyes, dressed in a black sleeveless shirt over blue pants. Especially since we dated. Morris, said Mary Jane, surprised. She dated him for a while before they broke up and she recognized her feelings for Peter. What do you want? I know why you ended your relationship with me, Mary Jane, Morris stated, nearly desperate. I had no car, no cash, no class, a nobody. In irritation, Mary Jane shook her head. You don't understand, just like that time ago. Morris responded, but I do. Everything's different now. Instead of that husband of yours, I can give you everything you've ever wanted and more. He scoffed at the mention of Peter. Don't you talk about my husband that way, Mary Jane said, glaring at the obviously deluded man. There's something I have to show that'll change your mind about him. I don't have to do anything. Mary Jane was going to depart when Morris grabbed her hand and pulled it away from him. And Peter is a better man than you'll ever be. He's helping people and reached to higher grounds in the honest way. Morris gave her a sneer. He's a geek. He's a hero. Mary Jane responded as she walked away from him. Don't turn your back on me. Morris yelled as the water fountain behind him erupted into a geyser, attracting the attention of Mary Jane and the other customers. Not too bad, huh, Red? Why, you're one of them. Morris smugly chuckled as he gazed at her. As long as I'm close enough to it, I can control all the water around me. What do you think? Will you come back to me now? He questioned confidently. I think you're crazier than ever, Mary Jane said as she held her necklace and touched the concealed tracer inside it. Morris sneered at her as he came to take her by force, but he was stopped by a red and blue gloved hand. And we're not alone. Spider-Man turned to face his secret wife. Are you all right, miss? I'm fine now, Mary Jane replied, relieved because she knew Peter would always be there for her. Morris smirked as he released Spider-Man's grip on his arm and headed towards Mary Jane, but the hero blocked his way. Hold it there. When that didn't work, Peter grumbled before punching or splashing through Morris's chest. What the hell? Oh, is the big shot hero wall crawler stuck? Morris teased before pressing his liquid hand against the hero's chest. Here, let me help you with that. Mary Jane dodged as her husband was thrown into the bush by a tremendous water torrent. I must be losing my mind, but did he just turn into liquid? Peter wondered aloud as the water retreated from him and returned to Morris. Now you see, I can transform, Morris said, his voice becoming increasingly delusory. I can do anything. I can give you anything you want, Red. I don't want anything from you, Mary Jane exclaimed before fleeing. Morris hissed as his body transformed to water before commanding the surrounding water. Geysers erupted from the fountain and potholes before large amounts of water washed over Parker Watson and someone else holding a bag. Help! She yelled, struggling to remain afloat. What the hell? The unfortunate bystander was also struck by the pressure of water, which was deep enough that no one could see him. Fortunately, she wasn't in there long since Spider-Man swung over and pulled her out of the water before landing near a police station. Stay here, Peter ordered his wife before returning to the park and landing on the roof of a nearby building while Morris consolidated his semi-normal shape. This has nothing to do with you, Spider-Man, so but off. When he stated those words, Spider-Man stared at him. I can't, they'd take away my superhero license. Anyway dude, he fired web lines at Morris and covered him from head to toe before heaving the crazed lunatic up and over the roof as the hero slammed him into the floor, breaking the web case in the process. No surfing allowed in the district. It was pointless because Morris immediately reappeared with no damage. Spider-Man launched another pair of web lines that slid past his foe. Pathetic. You don't really think you can match the power of Hydro Man, do you? His response was that the arachnid-themed hero dived it, and straight through Peter. Cough cough, did you just say Hydrant Man? Peter joked, despite the fact that he wanted to beat this person to a pulp, but a wise man once told him that a calm mind gets you far in life. The dogs must really love you. Morris grunted in disappointment. It's Hydro Man, and it's the last name you'll ever hear. Nope, my name is the last one you'll ever hear. Morris restored to normal form as he spun around and saw a punch heading at him before his head splattered upon contact. What the hell? What is he doing here? Spider-Man pondered as Patronus leapt at him from behind the self-proclaimed Hydro Man. Why are you here? Prison transfer at first, Patronus stated emphatically. But I have a beef with him, he said, pointing to the regenerated arrogant but irritated man. Spider-Man answered, you just met him. It's a personal matter, Spidey, Patronus hissed, recalling the evil that had befallen him and his family. He got the cheesecakes wet. Well, it appears that I have two bodies to destroy, Hydro Man murmured quietly until he noticed Naruto raise a fist next to his head. What are you going to do? You can't hurt me, he mocked the smirking ninja beneath his hood. Ekin. When a tremendous torrent of wind exploded from Patronus' fist and covered Hydro Man's body, Spider-Man's eyes widened as he began to splatter and regenerate multiple times until it was pointless. Whoa! Aerokinesis? He exclaimed, as Naruto glanced at him puzzledly. Arrow what? Naruto clarified before he and Spider-Man set it aside to find Hydro Man, who was not present. Damn it, he's gone. I wanted to teach him a lesson. So do I, Peter replied under his mask. Oh yeah, what did he do to get on your bad side? This was the web-slinger's response. Nothing that matters to you. Hey, easy there Spidey, Patronus remarked, calming the abnormally angry veteran hero with raised defensive arms. I'm not trying to hone in on your turf. I saw a victim being assaulted and came to help including you in that battle. Spider-Man let out a heavy sigh. Sorry, it's been a while since I worked together with someone excluding that time with Morlun. Do you really think he's gone? Patronus inquired, knowing that Hydro Man can recover from any hits or possible wind attacks. Spider-Man made a shaky motion with his head. Is he after that woman? I'll take that as a yes. So, physical attacks won't work but elemental attacks can. Somewhat, but he'll just regenerate. Good point, Patronus thought, until his wrist computer's beeps reminded him of the time. Shoot, and the place is closed now. Spider-Man turned to face his fellow superhero. What are you talking about? Don't worry about it. What we should worry about is the woman Hydro Man's after. One of us should look after her. Agreed. So, I take it you'll be looking for him then. What? Patronus inquired as Spider-Man Web swung away to tend to his hidden wife. Okay then. The girls are not going to like this, but I'm sure they'll understand, right guys? No comment, Kurama replied, shaking his head. Great. Patronus Hiroshind returned to the homestead to face the melody of his sweet deprived wife's fury. None of the heroes spotted the small black pocketbook once clutched by Mary Jane, or a liquefied arm snatched it up and carried it to the sewers, where it met its maker. TTIIPMXTTIIPMXTTIIPM. Meanwhile, Parker House in Midtown Manhattan. Patronus was here? As he grabbed his wife passionately, Peter nodded after removing his mask but not his costume. I'm so happy you're safe. Good thing you gave me this, Mary Jane said, breaking the hug and flipping the necklace to reveal a spider-shaped device that fit perfectly. Your spider tracer came in handy. Yeah, but who was that, MJ? Peter inquired as his wife turned away in embarrassment. He softly lifted her chin and drew her gaze to him. Whoever it is, I'll beat him. Mary Jane groaned before taking a seat on the couch and patting the space where Peter sat. His name is Morris Bench. I'm embarrassed to say, but I dated him back in high school. I don't remember him from high school, Peter said. Before I moved to New York. Before I met you and the others, Mary Jane explained quietly. He seemed nice at first, but he turned out to be a big mistake. I sure can pick them. May Jane accepted Peter's shoulder, placing her head on top while the hero's arms wrapped about her. That's true, but then again you and I wouldn't be together. You're different than him. Yeah, I'm solid and he's liquid. Peter joked, but his wife's "are you serious" look destroyed the mood. Just want to soften the situation a little. Peter, sorry. Peter kissed her on the lips. He's not going to find you, MJ. I'm not going to let him. I know, but perhaps we should move somewhere else for the time being. Are you sure? Mary Jane's solemn expression revealed her response. All well, then. Fortunately, I had planned for anything like this. Peter told her quietly. Anyway, talking about it won't help us any longer. Let's get some rest. With that in mind, the Parkers retired for the night, hoping to find some comfort from the events of the night before and the botched date. TTIIPMXTTIIPMXTTIIPM. The following day, Horizon Labs headquarters are located on South Street Seaport. After a late morning, Peter entered his own lab, Lab 7, which was large and equipped with technology and computers to help him with his ideas. Peter was intrigued by the sheer size and spaciousness of the laboratory when he first arrived, since it was all his and no one else's. He developed the noise-canceling headphones and a specialized motorbike helmet here, but he had many more ideas. The Parkers moved, swung, to the Upper West Side, where their safe house was located, as soon as dawn broke. Following Mary Jane's kidnapping prior to their separation, Peter made precautions to protect his family's safety in case his identity was ever disclosed and they required a safe haven. Percy and Andromeda Johnson are their aliases as Upper West Side residents. Morning, Karen. After Peter spoke the name, one of the computers activated, and the female AI appeared. Good day, Mr. Parker, is everything okay? I wish it was, but I need your help. As he neared his primary computer, which housed his AI, Peter said. What do you need? The doors opened and caught their attention before her creator could say anything. I believe you have a visitor, Mr. Parker. Who is it? The building is only accessible to Horizon Labs workers. Peter was too astonished to talk after looking at the individual. Hey there, Mr. Parker. Patronus was the name. P. Patronus. Peter inquired, surprised. What are you doing here? I'm here for help actually. Naruto replied before looking around the laboratory. Nice digs though. His gaze was drawn to the computer behind Peter. Nice computer too. Thank you so much, Patronus. I take good care of myself. Karen entered the room, much to Patronus' amazement as he looked around. What was that? As he looked for the individual who had spoken to him, Naruto inquired. Behind you. Patronus turned to gaze at the computer, where he noticed the computer lines squiggling swiftly and erratically. Hello. What are you? She's an artificial intelligence, an AI. Peter responded with pride to Naruto's admiration for his creation. I call her Karen. Patronus arched his brow. Karen? I would have chosen something along the lines of Kara. Kara has a pleasant voice. Peter snapped his fingers to attract the ninja's attention after he stared at it for too long, like a child seeing a whale for the first time in his life. You stated that you required assistance. What are you talking about? Right. I was minding my own business last night when this guy who can transform into and manipulate water appeared. Physical attacks don't work on him, therefore I was hoping you'd figure out a means to combat him. Patronus explained. He had already shown the world his ninjutsu through Futon, the Kage Bunshin, and the Rasengan, which was far more than he had meant. Now he must find new ways to fight in order to avoid revealing his ninjutsu. With science. All right. With a drop of sweat on his brow, Patronus murmured. So, I called Max last night and he said to talk to you. As he stared in disbelief at the hooded hero, Peter lifted a hand that stopped paused. I'm sorry, Max? Your superior. You don't know who your boss is? Of course, I do but, anyway, what's the villain? Peter inquired, pretending to be an uninformed civilian and feigned ignorance. Or who? He called himself Hydro Man. Patronus informed May Parker's nephew. Except for flames, what do you know that can beat water? I don't want to set fire to Manhattan with my sword. Is there any interesting technology or anything in here? Peter nodded and moved up to a table containing beakers and chemicals unknown to Naruto. If this Hydro Man's water composition is the same as regular H20 particles, then I'll be able to create a solution that neutralize him. You can do that? Naruto inquired, surprised. You can create something that'll stop Hydro Man with those liquids? He indicated the empty beakers and jars. Right now, Peter smiled at the Bostonian hero's youthful temperament. Let me show you. TTIIPMX Manhattan's Midtown. It's not every day that a crazy and super-powered ex-boyfriend comes after you and attempts to impose himself into your life. Mary Jane was well aware of the risks of dating, let alone marrying a superhero, especially one as well-known as New York's Spider-Man, yet their love endured and gave her the strength to do so. She had forgotten her wedding ring back at their apartment, so she figured she'd get there quickly and return without seeing Hydro Man. Spider-Man's wife locked the door and fled the building, her ring still on her finger. Now to get back home before something happens. Like me, Red? When this female looked out onto the sidewalk, she was astounded to see Morris standing there. I was hoping to run into you sooner or later. Mary Jane dashed down the street, hoping to get as far away from Hydro Man as possible, much to Hydro Man's delight. Oh Red, so naive. Before transforming himself into countless liters of water and catching up with his lover, Hydro Man stated. Patronus Sunshined appeared on one of the neighboring roofs just as Spider-Man flipped in midair before landing on the rooftop across the street. Spidey, where have you been? I've been hunting for you for the past 30 minutes. Do you have what we need? Spider-Man inquired, a little short of breath. He had to wait for Patronus to leave his lab in the perimeter before changing into his costume and swinging the long way to appear to come from a different direction. Yeah. Both heroes ran through the streets, following the torrent river until it dragged the victim over the barrier and into the port. No. Oh man. Patronus landed in front of the metal barriers, as Spider-Man clung to the wall side. There's no way a crazy person like him would kill this woman just like this. Spider-Man clenched his fists in rage before calming down. Karen, you got a signal on her spider tracer? he muttered to himself behind his mask. "Do you say something?" Naruto inquired, but he was dismissed in favor of the AI. Locking onto her signal, Spider-Man, as Peter examined his HUD, the AI replied by pulling up water pressure schematics of the harbor and noticing some abnormalities that pointed to one of the buildings across from their location. "She's there at the water pumping station." Peter nodded and pointed to their location. "Over there, Patronus." Before web swinging over there, Spider-Man alerted the newbie hero. "Hey, wait for me," Patronus yelled before using the harbor's approaching vessels as stables to cross the water. Just like riding a bike. As amazed onlookers, tourists, and fishermen watched him perform acrobatic feats with skill, he whispered under his breath. Both men arrived at the station by sneaking inside and crawling and squeezing through narrow spots until their target spotted their target and his target, the latter shocking Patronus when he recognized her. The woman from Boston? Hydro Man showed heaps of jewelry and money that lay next to his wife as Spider-Man glanced at him. Recently, there has been a succession of robberies, with no indication of B&E at all. It was during this time that Jonah Jameson declared Spider-Man to be the perpetrator of the robberies and demanded justice for the people of New York. So, it was this guy. Patronus wanted to attack, but Spider-Man motioned for him to hold off while Hydro Man explained the origins of his powers. Morris had been expelled from high school, and his parents had enlisted him in the Navy to teach him responsibility. He was dragged into the depths of the ocean sometime during his enlistment, where something transformed him and granted him his powers. When he told Mary Jane that she would be his one and only, Spider-Man sprang from the wall and launched a web line to swing kick right through Hydro Man, while Patronus landed next to the redhead beauty. "Hello again, Patronus." Mary Jane expressed relief that her husband and the Bostonian hero had arrived. The regenerated Hydro Man stared at the hooded hero. "Get away from her." His arms shifted before he blasted torrents of water at him, but Patronus snatched Mary Jane and placed her on his back as he jumped away from the targeted location. "Take this, creep." Patronus launched a little ball at his adversary, which popped open by contact on Hydro Man's body before he turned into a stone statue. "Wow, that's something. What in the world happened to him?" While getting off the ninja's back, Mary Jane stared at her secret husband who had landed nearby. "That's what I like to know." "Parker's handiwork, I take it?" Spider-Man inquired, and Naruto, shocked, nodded. "From time to time, he assists me. His signature was familiar to me." As Patronus examined the now stoned Hydro Man, a sweat drop slipped down his brow. From the looks of it, Parker made a powerful coagulant into that grenade, one that would react with the H2O particles in his body and become a hardening agent. Patronus looked at him blankly. "English please for normal people present." Mary Jane laughed as she stared at him. Basically, he turned to stone. "Ah." Patronus's head lifted slightly, indicating his recent comprehension. He next examined the loot from Morris's robbery operation as well as the adjacent pipes. "That's interesting." "What?" the hidden Parkers inquired. "A hunch." Patronus pushed his sleeve back and activated his wrist computer to summon help. "Sky, come in, Sky." He only received static crackle. "Are we deep underground or sufficient?" From the outside, it didn't appear to be such. Spider-Man noticed the pipes and recognized what Patronus' hunch was. "Karen, pull up the schematics of the city's water pipes." His lens's HUD obtained the needed blueprints and discovered that the majority of the water pipelines flowed the red blips that are the recently looted high-value establishments. "Now I see. Morris must have used the water pipes to go around the city via sewer lines, sinks, and anywhere else water can go." Patronus, great capture. "Thank you, but to be honest, I wasn't sure," Patronus said. "Just a hunch." "It's good to have gut feeling, especially in this type of business we do." "Thanks Spidey. That coagulant thingamjig, is it by chance flawed in some way?" "Why?" Spider-Man inquired before his brain began to quiver violently, alerting him to the presence of something nearby. "Oh, that's..." A torrent of water blasted the arachnid-themed hero into the mound of plunder, while Patronus evaded the one aimed at him and stood close to Mary Jane as Morris reformed in front of him. "Well, seeing as this has happened and I need to pay a certain scientist for this unanticipated development, it's time for a tactical retreat." Patronus threw Mary Jane over his shoulders and jumped into a vertical pipe for escape. "There's nowhere you can hide from me. I am everywhere." Patronus and Mary Jane made it to the streets before Hydro Man rebuilt himself from a nearby puddle and called a flood of water to attack the hooded hero. Both he and Mary Jane could feel the heat, but the masked ninja was unaffected by it thanks to his flame, heat-resistant robe. Hydro Man, on the other hand, was feeling the heat as droplets of water or sweat began to stream from his arms and face excessively while pursuing them. "Give her back to me." "Come and get her, me, you watery bastard," Mary Jane and Patronus both said at the same time as the former began to sweat. As he chased them, Hydro Man scoffed at the taunts and name-calling, albeit his pace reduced from sprinting to walking and his breathing became heavy with each stride. Finally, he cornered them as they stood on the ledge, conversing like old friends. "What is this?" Patronus chuckled. "Hey, you look out of breath, pal." A resurrected Spider-Man placed himself on the roof's ledge, where he encountered Hydro Man in his liquid state. "Why don't we all just take a breather?" His HUD examined his adversary's biological structure and returned some surprising data. "I knew it." "You again?" Morris panted, struggling to maintain his footing. "You and you," he finished while pointing to Patronus. "Can't beat me." Patronus made a loud chuckle to catch his attention. "Spidey and I don't have to, pal," the ninja said, pointing to Mary Jane. "She already has." "What?" said Hydro Man, as if it were an insult. Spider-Man was the one who revealed his adversary's demise. "Don't you get it, Mitch? She's led you away from the water that feeds you. You're barely holding yourself together, pal. You're almost out of. You. I, for one, wanted to keep fighting you, but Red here told me about her plan, and I went along with it." Patronus gave Mary Jane a high five, which she returned. "Good thing I did, or you would have been in a real world of pain, according to my book." "Why, Mary Jane? Why did you do this?" Approached Hydro Man, but Patronus and Spider-Man blocked his path to protect the actress. "I love you." Mary Jane shook her head, disagreeing with his stated position. "You don't kidnap people you love, Maury, and you don't force yourself on people. Especially if the person is already married to a great man," she said as she took a small step closer toward the crazy robber cradling his head. "Now, let us get you to the hospital." That appeared to be the last straw for the hydrokinetic man, who shouted in agony before glaring at Spider-Man and Patronus. "You two, I'll destroy you with my bare hands," he yelled, but the heroes merely dashed to the side, but not before Mary Jane jumped upon her husband's back. The heroes and Mary Jane knew the Hydro Man was gone when the water did not regenerate in any way and steam could be visible owing to the heat from the sun. "Thank you once more, Patronus," Mary Jane said as she remained on Peter's back. "You definitely left your mark in the community." "Which community is that?" The Parkers couldn't tell if he was joking or serious because his cowl covered his entire face, even when the sun was shining. "Well, I guess I should take my leave here," Patronus said as he turned around to shunshine back to May's Brooklyn Bakery, where he observed a very small gleam in the distance. It glistened like a diamond stuck between rocks in a riverbed. Except his ninja senses warned him of the impending peril. He wasn't the only one. Mary Jane. Spider-Man went for his wife and tackled her to the ground as his spider sense warned him of the impending danger. There was no mistaking the machine gun's familiar, rat-a-tat-tat sound, nor was there any metal touching metal. Both husband and wife glanced up from their positions on the ground to discover Patronus standing over them with his blue sword in rapid motion, surrounded by little flashes. "Karen, is he?" "Yes, Spider-Man, Patronus is deflecting bullets away from you and MJ with sufficient accuracy and precision, though there is a small flaw in his technique." Mary Jane yelped as a stray bullet ricocheted near her left hand as she drew it close to her body. "Hence that stray bullet that nearly took your wife's hand. Remind me to tone down her personality at home," Peter thought to himself. In contrast, Naruto cursed himself after hearing Red's astonished cry. "I need to work on my deflection skills more." This was one of two unique Soresu tactics that stressed its defensive character and formed its key doctrines against both unarmed and armed opponents, including ranged weaponry such as guns. This approach is known as the Circle of Shelter for lack of a better term. To the trio's relief, the hail of gunshots stopped when sirens blared in the distance, signaling their arrival at the scene of the murder. Patronus breathed quietly as the Parkers rose slowly after the threat had passed before the sole lady of the trio spoke aloud. "Okay, who the hell shot at us?" Mary Jane exclaimed, trying to calm herself with Spider-Man's hands on her shoulders. "Whoever it is, I don't think they were going to say, hello. At least not in the usual way." Patronus sheathed his blade in its scabbard. "So, Red, your husband happens to be the one and only Spider-Man, huh?" Mary Jane and Peter were stunned at the ninja's back before the husband snapped out of it. "What are you talking about, Patronus? She's not my wife," he lied comfortably after years of expertise. "You called her Mary Jane. We already knew her name. Hydro Man said my name a lot, and he almost thought he owned me," Mary Jane explained, as Patronus slightly raised his head in accord, obviously embracing the whole thing. except for when he took a necklace with an identifiable pendant off his robe. If that's the case, then Naruto turned over the pendant, revealing the spider tracer on the other side. Then is there a spider-like tracking device underneath here? He asks, revealing his wrist computer, which displayed radio frequency. I hit some interference back in the water station and found it to be you, Mary Jane. Good thing he learned a few things about radio frequencies, even if they're still a pain in the ass to remember. Technology is not his strong suit, but he does his best. Mary Jane sighed in defeat, and Spider-Man dropped his head to convey his feelings. What do you want? Pardon. Patronus asks, perplexed. What do you want? Spider-Man said again. Patronus scoffed at the Parkers as he turned around, as if their presence was suddenly insufferable. Patronus shook his head and laughed heartily. What makes you think I want something from you? Just because I discovered your connections to each other, you think I'll blackmail you? He tossed the necklace at Mary Jane, who caught it with one hand. There are people out there who would love to see me suffer by pursuing my loved ones, Spider-Man retorted angrily. They're too important to me. Patronus informed the veteran hero, then be better at protecting them. Make the device even smaller or, in fact, invisible, he sighed before turning to face the couple. Let's put that aside for now and focus on the other matter at hand, the shooter. The redirection brought a sigh of relief from Spider-Man. Was the shooter specifically targeting you? He inquired of the ninja, who shook his head. I don't think so, cuz there's no way the shooter could have known about me entering the city today or any days. Boston PD told me of the convoy's departure 5 minutes beforehand. Patronus went on to say. I think the target was you, Spidey, or your wife altogether. Mary Jane was disappointed by this, but for them attack us in broad daylight, that would mean. They've been watching us for a while, Spider-Man said, finishing his wife's sentence. MJ, we should assume they know our identities and everyone associated with us. Patronus inquired as the couple nodded. Do any of you have other safe houses to stay low? Let's get there. Following Mary Jane's placement on Peter's back, the trio of married adults fled beneath the covering of Patronus's abnormally heavy smoke, courtesy of his extra-large concealment bomb. A few minutes later, two disguised adults in identical black attire with firearms approached the location where the heroes and woman had their fight with Hydro Man. As chunks of the rubble dropped to the earth from the power behind it, one of them kicked the ledge in rage. They won't get away from us, I swear. The male of the duo exclaimed loudly as his buddy remained mute. They fled as NYPD patrol cars arrived to the building, ensuring that their retribution would be complete and that no one could stop them. TTIIPMXTTIIPMXTTIIPM. The following day, Horizon Labs, Horizon 7. Manhattan Island's South Street Seaport. After a full day of essentially visiting New York City, a T-shirt wearing Mary Jane awoke from her needed rest and returned to the one location that is the safest for them right now, which is her husband's lab. It's silent, isolated, and has very limited access, as well as top-tier security systems, thanks to Horizon Labs employees' numerous ideas for improvement and technology. The advantages of having your own lab are that you can use it for anything you desire, such as a bedroom for late work or supposedly hiding from assassins. Mary Jane staggered out of her bedroom and walked down the stairs, still dazed. When her feet touched the ground floor of the lab, she let out a yawn as she automatically detected her husband's presence. Good morning, honey, the redhead beauty said, her eyes closed. Voyeurism much. Mary Jane's pace slowed as she glanced at the audience, which included her costumed husband, the cross-armed Patronus, and her husband next to him. And I have to say this, wow, Patronus said candidly as he blocked Spider-Man's attacks with his forearms alone. Mary Jane's T-shirt showed her left shoulder, and the bra strap was undone. The redhead's legs were long and healthy, and her underwear was the center of attention, with the motto, Spider-Man's Cherry, across the center. Oh God, I'm so embarrassed. Before he gazed at Spider-Man and Peter Parker, Patronus observed Spider-Man's mortified wife run back to the privacy of the bedroom upstairs. The reason for another Peter Parker is the same as it was for the original, holographic projection. Spider-Man had his AI Karen activate a hologram of himself last night, before they arrived at Horizon Labs, so he could be in two places at once. The striving hero had been waiting for situations like this for a long time. Okay, now that the pleasant distraction is gone, he escaped another punch thanks to his quick reactions. You were saying, Karen? Patronus inquired of the AI. After the courtesy of the NYPD via secretly hacking, I analyzed the photos and downloaded copies of their online reports. Karen revealed the trio, as projections of the specified documents, including the weapon, emerged for all to view. The weapon used at the scene was a modified M4 carbine with a Soviet sniper scope. Custom job? Spider-Man inquired of his AI. Yes, Spider-Man, but oddly enough I cannot find any online paperwork connected to this custom job, which suggests this was accomplished under the table. Meaning? Patronus said, hoping for a simpler explanation as Peter responded. It means the weapon can't be tracked. Ah. That's smart and devious, this suggests planning of a strategist. Agreed, but who is the question? Can you think of anything? Have you just met me? Patronus then stared at the hologram projection of Peter and said, good point. Peter, can you analyze this? He asks, taking out a small plastic bag containing a bullet. I may or may not have infiltrated the precinct, grabbed one of them with a replacement, before I came here. Figured we can find out where the shooter has been before their attempt.
Gladly. Just set it on the scanner over there, Peter remarked as Patronus followed the directions and let the machine do its job. It might take some time.
Patronus turned to face the civilian. How long? A few hours. I can go for a hot dog. Want anything? Spider-Man made a shaky motion with his head. I'm fine, thanks, he said as he saw the hooded hero walk through one of the secret hatches leading to his lab and exhaled a sigh of relief as he was finally gone. Deactivate the hologram, Karen, please.
Certainly, Spider-Man, Karen said as the hologram of Peter vanished and was replaced by a blonde-haired woman in a business suit. I just finished the bullet test, the AI said, creating an image of a cemetery someplace outside the city. According to the readings, there are traces of marble dust on the bullet, which indicated your shooter's previous whereabouts. I pulled up the records and found no one of significance, Karen said, looking at her creator, who had seen a ghost. Spider-Man.
I have to go. And Patronus? Should I inform him? No, Spider-Man fired a web line to another hatch as he headed towards the cemetery, not noticing his frightened wife who was outside the room and had overheard the entire exchange with the AI. TTIIPMX. The cemetery in New York. Peter realized there was more to this than a simple killing when he spotted the cemetery on Karen's holographic map. He never intended to return to this location under these conditions, only on sentimental or commemorative anniversaries. He also never imagined she'd have anything to do with it. For the first time since his arrival, the costumed man said, "Hey Gwen." What sprawled before him was a gravestone with the words inscribed, "Gwen Stacy," on it. The grave of the first lady he loved before he and Mary Jane met each other years after her death. I meant to come by and visit for some time, but things have been crazy, crazier the past few years, most recently the past months. I got married to one of your friends and I know you would have approved of her. My aunt opened a bakery in Brooklyn of all places, but I know how much you loved cheesecake and I'm sure you'd like May's recipe. The impending blanket was visible above the starry sky, as thunderclaps signaled the onset of imminent rain. There's also a new superhero in the world, and fortunately for me, he's based in Boston, Spider-Man said. He's a good guy, but he's also mysterious. I don't like mystery, especially if one who fought with the Avengers and refused such membership. And his abilities are really something to say the least. He just has this presence about him that makes me uncomfortable even though he goes out of his way to help me. I know I'm being selfish for keeping him out of the loop, but I still feel unease about him. A tiny breeze blew sharply on his costume, like if Gwen was chastising him for his way of thinking.
You're probably correct, but look what my being Spider-Man brought to my family, to you. He'll never forget the moment he knew Gwen was dead in his arms. The agony was excruciating, and he was furious at the person who had caused it. Norman Osborne, I thought I made him pay that day, but somehow he came back and made my life hell. I persevered and didn't let him break me. Somehow, this has all the writings of that bastard and he solidified that title by involving you and my family.
Raindrops dropped from the thunderclouds above as he prepared to depart because no one else had arrived, or so he believed. We're not alone, Peter reasoned as years of experience, not his spider sense, told him. Spider-Man, you have enemies around you. Enemies as in more? Come to pay your sins, Spider-Man, said the voice, definitely male, as it became one with the graveyard. Because if you did, you're too late. Way too late. Spider-Man looked about cautiously as his head tingled with discomfort to the point of a headache. I don't recognize the voice, he said, but Spider Sense is going crazy. He then ordered Karen to discover alternate paths out of the cemetery, and his HUD displayed arrows indicating the alternatives. Who is it? Who's out there? I'm wondering what's more insulting, that you don't know who this is, or that you do and you're too much of a coward to say so. Spider-Man's skepticism deepened when he sensed presences in both the east and west, and his spider sense intensified. Hard to say. Why don't you come on out where I can see you, and we can find out together? Suit yourself. He was quick. Quicker than Spider-Man had anticipated as the assassin ambushed him from behind and threw him down the hill away from Gwen's tomb. It was now a fight to determine who would land the first punch after their rolling tumble ended, and it was not the hero. How does it feel, huh? The enraged assassin slammed into the veteran hero's head. How does it feel knowing you're alone and nobody's going to help you? Huh? He landed another punch with such precision that it almost knocked the hero out. How does it feel knowing you're going to die alone? And furious Spider-Man snatched another punch by the wrist and deflected it away from his face. I don't know, and I don't want to find out. He kicked the assassin off him, then hit him hard in the stomach before grabbing his adversary's neck. Let's find out who you are, Spider-Sense said as it shook him south, from behind. As the force knocked Spider-Man off the first assassin, another assassin kicked from overhead and smacked Spider-Man's chin. The first assassin regained consciousness and pulled a dagger before slashing at the hero, who dodged the side-to-side hits. Spider-Man groaned under his breath as the assassins attacked him from all angles, but his reflexes and quickness saved him from their attacks. Spider-Man managed to catch a breather with a backflip before firing a webline from his web shooters. He directed his automated gadgets to fire 2 web lines that divided into 4 lines, but the assassins rolled out of the way and charged at him. Ricochet web. He launched a single web line this time, but it missed its objectives as it ricocheted on a tree and a headstone before tagging the second assassin, as the name implies. Another resource he employed at Horizon Labs was to upgrade and improve his web shooters, which now fired distinct web lines in response to his voice instructions or gestures for the first time. And heave. The tagged assassin was yanked to the side and collided with the other opponent, but they swiftly regrouped as the fighters glared down at each other. You're not going to get away, Spider-Man. We know where you live, what your loved ones do, everything, exclaimed the enraged assassin. We will not rest until vengeance is ours. Then it's good that I'm still here. Both assassins tensed and struck out with a single leg and knife blow at the voice behind them, but Patronus simply seized their limbs and tossed them away. Now that I'm considered a friend of Spider-Man, please help me understand why you're trying to kill him. After their recovery in midair, the ninja felt hatred oozing from the assassin on his right, whom he christened Wrath, for short. Do not interfere with our business with Spider-Man, Naruto said to the assassin on his left. Unlike Wrath, the second assassin was feminine and placid, though there were undertones of wrath in her voice. As a result, the ninja dubbed her Reason in this circumstance. Patronus flicked his wrists, revealing his hidden blades, which alarmed the assassins. I beg to differ. What are you doing here? Exclaimed Spider-Man. Your wife overheard you and told me everything Karen discovered, Patronus said, looking at the seasoned hero. You really should learn to trust people when they genuinely want to help you, he said, motioning with his fingers to the assassins. Come. Wrath and Reason had already charged at him before he could finish his one-word sentence. Wrath led the onslaught, launching kicks and elbow punches from all sides, while Reason offered assistance with knife cuts. Patronus, on the other hand, easily avoided all of their assaults because they were nothing near his speed. Come on, you two. I'm sure you can do better than that, Patronus taunted, hoping to enrage them. That is one of Sorasu's anti-enemy ideals. It worked on at least one of them, as Wrath charged like a bull and his moves were sloppy in comparison to his previous encounter with Spider-Man. Here we go. Patronus ducked beneath Wrath's haymaker and counterattacked with his right hidden blade, inflicting a terrible cut on his chest to his oblique muscles. That just enraged him, and his strikes became more erratic but unfocused as Patronus sidestepped each attack while slashing his body with his hidden blades. Wrath appeared to Reason and Spider-Man to be a boulder attempting to harm the flowing river that is Patronus, as the latter was moving so quickly that his body left afterimages behind his every movement. Reason mumbled under her breath as she stopped Spider-Man's blow, her forearm stinging from the power behind it. You're just as fast as your associate. Spider-Man backflipped away as Reason reacted with quick attacks before firing dual web lines that ensnared the female assassin this time with an extra kick. Taser web. Electric currents raced towards the female combatant, but she severed the thick web with her secondary knife and jumped away to gain some distance. Wrath was slammed through a tree moments later, landing next to Reason with many lacerations, his black suit scattered with patches of ripped cloth, and his weapons were non-existent. Reason felt a presence behind her as she reached for her falling partner and turned on her knee to keep a slender golden blade from reaching her face, but it sliced into her arm instead. As he landed next to Spider-Man, Patronus pulled his blade and flipped over the assassins, or what would have happened in the third round if Reason hadn't carried her injured partner and jumped behind an arriving truck, which became their getaway vehicle. What was that about? Spider-Man said of the ninja, who remained silent while staring at the now-gone truck. How did you find me? I didn't really leave the building area, Patronus said, looking at the experienced hero. I kept my distance from Horizon Labs and followed you here, plus your wife did tell me about your findings. How? Spider-Man inquired after seeing Patronus reveal his wrist computer. You hacked Parker's AI, he said, apparently insulted by the idea. No, Red told Karen to hack into my wrist computer, and Max isn't going to like the fact that Karen hacked into his software. The ninja approached the headstone where Spider-Man was prior to the brief struggle. This Gwen Stacy. Did she have anything to do with this? The veteran remained silent. Spidey, I get you were uneasy around me. I can tell from your body language, but right now, you and I got to really work together if you want those assassins stopped. Peter looked at the comparatively inexperienced hero and realized why the Boston Police Department accepts him but not the New York Police. He wants to aid, but only if the party allows him to do so and fully tells him of the situation so he knows what to do. See you then, Spidey, Patronus said as he walked away from the gravesite to return to Hiroshima and enjoy the pleasures of his family. When Spider-Man spoke after a while, his speed froze beneath the Archangel statue. She was someone special to me and my wife. You could say that she was my first and that bastard took her from me. Who? The Green Goblin. TTIIPMXTTIIPMXTTIIPM. After a half hour, Brooklyn's Maze Bakery, oh dear, sighed the old Parker matriarch as she noticed the increased raindrops. That young lady said there wouldn't be any rain tonight, but the stations prefer quantity over quality, she remarked, referring to Channel 5's gorgeous torso assets. Back in my day, they would choose women of good standing and brains. Ding 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 ding. Sorry, but we're closed now, May told the expectant customer, her back to them. When she didn't hear the bell ring indicating their departure, the old Parker grabbed for the small panic button beneath the shelving. Her nephew placed it in case robbers planned to target her store. I said we're. A single hand covered her hand and cut her statement short. We know, but we don't care. All that matters is the death of your nephew and wife. Brother, can't I just kill her, and ruin the plan? Forget it, Reason responded, much to May's amazement. She noticed the expression on the Parker woman's face. He didn't tell you. Well, I shouldn't be surprised since he killed our mother that night. Plus, he won't know unless we tell him, Wrath said as he took a small black box from his pocket. In case you haven't realized, Auntie, this is a jammer. May stared at the masked persons before covering her head with a bag. Peter, save me. TTIIPMXTTIIPMXTTIIPM Horizon Labs in the Southside Seaport. How in the hell is this guy not in jail? That's what we think all the time, Spider-Man replied quietly as Mary Jane remained in his hug. He's devious and extremely smart. He even created false evidence to exonerate him from his past crimes and declared him sane as such. Patronus tightened his fists as he gazed at the Green Goblin's mugshot projected by Karen's hologram projector. It had a narrow chin and head, green skin, and long ears, much like a goblin from the Goblin Slayer comic he saw once in a cafe store, and he already knows your identities and such. Yes. And any move you make against him, whether as Spider-Man or your civilian identity, he'll anticipate it. Yes. And yet you're still standing with your sanity intact. He was given a brief but basic history of Spider-Man's battles and activities against the Green Goblin. Yeah. Spider-Man couldn't think of another way to respond. You're really strong, Spidey, Patronus said, looking at the pair, who appeared surprised and perplexed. You and your wife, any lesser people would have been broken from you guys went through. Mary Jane felt honored to be complimented by a hero, particularly Patronus, who was regarded as an enigma by the superpower community. And he was correct. If she had been weak in any way or allowed the tragedy to influence her, she would have abandoned Peter years ago, but her love for him and his love for her made them stronger together. Thank you, Patronus, Mary Jane replied to the hooded ninja, while her husband agreed. Sure. Beep 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 beep. They were back inside the lab to investigate the blood in Patronus' hidden blades in order to identify the assailants and plan their next move against them. As part of his intuition, Peter had also inserted a third sample of DNA into the machine. It would be on their terms this time, not the assassins. The results are back, Karen said, placing the results next to images that appeared on hologram screens. I will leave you three alone. Dear God, Mary Jane glanced aside, while Spider-Man stared frightened at three images. Patronus looked at the photographs and noticed a really attractive girl with sun-like hair, blue eyes, and a charming smile. Her image was titled, Gwen Stacy, and it was displayed alongside the DNA findings of the two assassins, with the word, match, emboldened beneath the holograms. So, she was the mother? But Gwen, as far as I know, has never had intercourse with anyone. Spider-Man came to a halt when his wife left his hug and paced nearby. MJ? Red, you know about this. I don't know how fast they grew, but I know they're not your children, Spider-Man, Mary Jane said solemnly as she turned around. She made me swear not to tell anyone, especially you. She was so ashamed that she wanted to forget about it. Spider-Man's breathing became labored as his mind returned to the months preceding Gwen's death. She had abruptly left during their relationship and spent a year in Paris before returning to New York to continue their connection. Since then, she's been jittery and uneasy around. No, not him. She even told me who the father is. No, in his mind, Gwen was strolling to a bedroom in a mansion he hadn't seen in a long time. He clenched his teeth because he didn't want to go there, but his clever mind was racing ahead. He noticed Gwen undressing in front of the man with whom she had an affair. He could see her moaning in pleasure and ecstasy, her hips held in place by hard hands. As the blaze lit up the shadow that shrouded the man, he sank to his knees. Norman Osborn had a smug and happy expression before being replaced by the Green Goblin mask.
No, yelled Spider-Man as he reached his breaking point and flipped over a cluttered table of technology. He then shattered another table, then a few portions of the wall, which was now peppered with fist-sized punches.
Before the lab could be destroyed, one hooded ninja held the outraged arachnid-themed hero in a full Nelson. Spidey, you have to calm down, Patronus yelled to the flailing hero, who either ignored or refused to listen. He must have really loved her to be driven this crazy, he said as Mary Jane slipped in front of her enraged husband. Red, you show. He's my husband. That silenced the ninja because he understood the wife's "stay out of this" tone. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, Spider-Man. Her words reached him as the veteran began to calm down, her hands on his masked head soothing his rage. I know, but I'm here for you. I'm not going anywhere. When he heard tears, Patronus released the hero and moved back as the couple held each other in their hug. Patronus. He heard the AI from his wrist computer and took a step back. There's something else, but I'm not sure if Spider-Man is capable of this. Shoot, Karen. A few minutes ago, I was alerted to a silent alarm on a specific frequency known to Mr. Parker. And? Where's this place? Aunt May's Bakery in Queens. Time slowed as Naruto processed the information he had just received. Is May alright? You should see this. Naruto watched the AI pull up the security video and saw the assassins take May's body out of the shop, but not before Wrath posted a sign that was clearly for Spider-Man. Meet us at the site where she died. As his chakra began to flare up in response to his emotions, he tightened his fist, but the ninja quickly reeled it in to prevent smashing the laboratory. What is it? The ninja said, turning around to face a concerned Mary Jane, as Spider-Man sat back to calm down before telling her what Karen had just told him. You have to save her, Mrs. Parker pleaded, concerned. The question is, Naruto poked Spider-Man in the ribs, should I bring him along or not? Mary Jane anticipated what her husband would do, but the gorgeous redhead shared the same trait as the hero and left to inform him. Meanwhile, Patronus observed Spider-Man punching the wall once more before both men exited Horizon Labs by one of the secret hatches. It is now time to exact revenge on the Parker family. TTIIPMX TTIIPMX TTIIPM George Washington Memorial Bridge.
Reason stood near the spot where her mother was killed by the guy she was told was her father. Reason's mind wandered back to the moment she and her brother attacked Spider-Man as the sun was ready to set despite the rainy skies. There was no doubt that he was mighty and strong, just as her uncle had said, but she was perplexed by his morals toward her mother.
She didn't notify her brother because she was the first to arrive, but Reason witnessed Spider-Man dig Gwen's grave and took a sample from her corpse. She was angry at the moment because of his destruction of her mother's burial site, but she waited until he filled the grave and stared at it solemnly considering his body language at the time. So one question had lingered ever since. What was he up to? The unmistakable, thwip thwip, heralded the coming of her adversary, and she spun around to see Spider-Man in a deep squat after landing. Where's your friend? She inquired as her hostage, May, whined due to the latter's proximity to the cliff. Over here, Patronus said, appearing behind Reason before scooping the dressed May onto his shoulder and reappearing close to Spider-Man. And here. As he removed the cloth from May's head, he caught a glimpse of her terrified countenance before it changed to one of relief. Don't worry, May. We'll get you out of here. May and Peter appeared perplexed. How do you know my name? She inquired as Patronus snatched her into his arms. Patronus, get her out of here, Peter yelled as the sound of a jet sounded out in the area, prompting the trio to search for the cause. The intensity of the ache in his brain made him cringe, signaling the seriousness of the danger ahead. Spider sense is crazy. Where is it? Where is he? Spider-Man. The opposition squad looked back to see a guy on a jet-like hover vehicle speeding at the arachnid-themed hero as Spider-Man rolled out of the way and Patronus sprang backwards to avoid the rushing assault. When the heroes and May regained their bearings, they were astounded to find the costumed Wrath. He wasn't wearing the black bodysuit and mask anymore, so he looked different to Patronus while still seeming recognizable to Spider-Man and May. They should, for both Parkers had seen it many times in their lives. Wrath was dressed in a gray bodysuit with a light purple cloth wrapped around his shoulders, matching boots and gloves, and a satchel slung over his shoulder, but it was the mask that drew their attention. It was the mask of the Green Goblin. Specifically, prepare for your death at the hands of the Gray Goblin. Gray Goblin? Spider-Man yelled angrily before the top was engulfed in smoke as a result of Naruto's explosives. Not this time, said the Gray Goblin, throwing a hand-sized gray pumpkin bomb into the smoke-filled region, which turned out to be an air bomb as the smoke cleared, but his and his sister's foes remained, except for one. Where is she? She's safe, Patronus said calmly as Spider-Man glanced at the disguised assassins. Naruto had built a clone and had sent him to rescue May from the smoke cloud. This is your only chance, you two, surrender. Gray Goblin ridiculed his request. After all we did to get him here, he said, pointing to his mother's killer, we won't stop until he's dead. Then hear what I have to say about it all, Spider-Man said for the first time since his arrival. No tricks, Zhu the truth here. Now let me get things straight and you tell me if I'm wrong. You think I'm your father. You think I abandoned Gwen, killed her, and left alone overseas to fend for yourselves, given some letters and finally had a name to go with your pain. Now you came to destroy my life the way you think I destroyed yours. That about cover it? Gray Goblin arrived on his glider from here. That about covers it, except we know you're our father, not think. My sister and I are stronger and faster than normal people and aging faster as well, right? Spider-Man inquired, as both Stacy twins remained silent. And that's not all. Both of you are dying due to your blood. From the results, you two aged 2 or 3 years for every real year in real time, perhaps even faster. Your age has accelerated like progeria, but it's your enhanced strength that kept you safe from being destroyed. Goblin nodded slightly stiffly. Which is the only thing we have to thank you for. There's just one problem. I'm not your father, Spider-Man stated emphatically. Your father was a man named Norman Osborne and... You lie. Gray Goblin raged as he removed his mask, showing his face for the first time. He had his mother's blonde hair but his real father's short hair and green eyes. He gave us a home, looked after us, educated us, trained us. Then he told us about you and your betrayal and why your death is necessary. That's when Patronus stepped in. Necessary. The twins stared at him, and he felt their glares.
That lunatic wreaked havoc on Spider-Man, your mother, and everyone involved in their lives. He exclaimed, pointing to the male twin. But you already know who Norman Osborn really is, since after all you're wearing the same costume via different color. In fact, I think you knew about your lineage for a while now, but kept your sister in the dark about it so you two can continue that coward of a father's vengeance against Spider-Man.
Gabriel. The sister asked her brother, who didn't even look at her, tell him he's wrong. Gabriel. She began, upset by his concealing secrets from her. After everything we've been through, you kept this from me?
Sarah, is that why you told me to leave early and meet you here on the bridge? To wear that suit and proudly proclaim your lineage to the Green Goblin? Sarah shrieked with rage.
And another thing you should know about Norman Osborn. He was exposed to a potion that gave him amazing speed and strength, but it also ruined his mind. Spider-Man continued, after his death, I thought he was dead, but I didn't stop to think of him having possible healing abilities. If his DNA was encoded with the formula at the time of your conception, it explains about your accelerated aging. Patronus said, which means, Gabriel and Sarah will die of old age in a matter of years if they don't do something. Spider-Man warned Patronus. I can help them, he said, looking at the twins, while Naruto gazed at him incredulously. I can help you. Just trust me. That's the problem here. I don't trust you and I'll never trust you. Patronus drew his arms around his chest. Well, it's a good thing that one of you does. What do you mean? Gabriel inquired as Patronus moved his head towards the single girl in the room, Sarah. Sarah, Gray Goblin said, almost demandingly, as his sister removed her mask. Patronus and Spider-Man were taken aback when they saw Sarah, who had the same facial traits as her mother and long blonde hair with a black band. What is he talking? After drawing aside his right sleeve, Patronus raised his arm and tapped the wrist computer. This, genius. As expected of an AI, she detected a rather unusual. He paused as he struggled to find the words, but when he couldn't, he looked at Spider-Man. Can you explain it? I don't understand what Karen just did.
Psi Karen discovered a hidden worm in Horizon Labs network, and it was targeting Lab 7. Sarah shivered slightly as she recognized what he was referring to. Just before she deleted the worm from the system, Karen recovered the data log your sister found. It was the blood results I performed on both your DNA and your mother.
Gabriel was humiliated as he glanced at his sister. Sarah,
I've had this nagging feeling since we saw him at the graveyard, so I used a bug to burrow into his secured network, Sarah explained as Gabriel began to rage. I wondered about it, but after everything that happened just now, we've been lied to for years by a madman. Our real father, the Green Goblin, killed our mother and twisted us to be Spider-Man's assassins.
Patronus mumbled gently after the last word, like Spidey, we can help you. He was hesitant about Spider-Man's idea to talk to them and convince the twins to surrender peacefully, but he was always the one to offer second chances. Last chance, you two.
No, I'll kill you both, exclaimed Osborne's offspring as he shot at them in his glider. I won't let you take my sister from me.
Gabriel, stop it. Sarah yelled, but her words were lost as the Grey Goblin circled the area, hurling pumpkin bombs at the heroes. No. After Patronus expertly hurled his shuriken, which split into multiple pieces and caused explosions in midair, the bombs did not reach them. Grey Goblin sneered at Spider-Man, but his fury was directed at the cloaked hero because he was the one who messed everything up. Spider-Man was supposed to be dead by now. By their own hands, but he came along and thwarted their plans to inflict suffering on their target. This Patronus had also taken his sister away from him. Die you! Exclaimed Grey Goblin as he fired his gun at the ninja. Naruto avoided being hit by the bullet by turning his torso aside, but he heard something or someone moan in pain. When he looked back, his eyes widened in surprise. Oh. No. Spider-Man yelled in defiance as he spotted it as well. Sarah staggered backwards to the cliff, shot in the abdomen and bleeding profusely. Gabe. I've been. Sarah tumbled from the balcony, shot. No, not this time. Spider-Man jumped over the brink to save Sarah. Grey Goblin smirked at the chance to murder Spider-Man and was ready to fly towards him when he felt a presence behind him and a flood of intent wash over him. When he turned around, he saw Patronus with red eyes within his hood, before his eyesight blurred as a glowing gloved fist neared his face. Meanwhile, Spider-Man approached the unconscious Sarah and gripped her midsection before firing a webline at the support beams as he turned toward the city. Hang in there, Sarah. I'll get you, okay? Just stay alive. Go, Spider-Man, Patronus said calmly, while an unconscious Grey Goblin lay next to his feet and his glider was damaged following a disastrous landing. TTIIPMX. After 4 days, Midtown Medical Center. He stood at the bedside, watching the chest rise and fall in time with the cardiac machines. He could hear the hospital personnel muttering outside the private room as NYPD guards stayed outside owing to his crimes against May Parker for kidnapping, but it didn't bother him. They didn't matter because they were insignificant in comparison to him and his family. That is, the Osbornes. Norman switched his eyes to his son's head, where he was speechless but saddened with what had happened to him. He was conducting activities for his arch-rival when he received the call about Gabriel in the hospital, and he has since visited his son in the hopes that he may wake up and inherit his heritage. But his hopes were dashed when the doctor in charge informed him that Gabriel had major damage around his brain and that his face was unrecognizable due to bandages covering it completely. He was in a coma, and not even his Osborne blood could save him. Crush Norman flexed his hand after slightly gripping the IV pole in half. Gabriel informed him about the Boston hero's involvement in Spider-Man's assassination prior to the twins' final encounter. Nobody interferes with their game, and someone, this Patronus, will pay the price for his intrusion. Sarah, his daughter, is nowhere to be found, and all attempts to contact her have failed. She'd gone underground, and ignoring his signals meant only one thing. She's weak, just like her mother, but it doesn't matter because I still have one child to carry my legacy, Norman said as he moved to the window and gazed out at the cloud-covered night sky as the deluge continued to fall on his city. Spider-Man and now Patronus, it seems I have to work harder. He turned around before closing the window blinds. Nothing could be seen across the street under the cover of darkness, until when a lightning bolt struck the sky and shined sufficiently to reveal a wet Patronus peering at the chamber window where the Osbornes were.
Now he knows what Norman Osborne looks like and can assess his talents. His malevolence was out of this world for someone of his stature, but Naruto anticipated nothing less. He lingered in New York to see whether Norman would pay him a visit and to have a private chat with him, but Kurama stopped him from committing a mistake that could have disastrous consequences for him and Spider-Man.
Patronus remained in the shadows as he hurried across the rooftops to one specific location because his women would not let him come home without what he came for. TTIIPMX TTIIPMX TTIIPM Queens and May's Bakery, this is delicious. Yes, May, it is delicious. Parker, who was in her 80s, smiled at her nephew and granddaughter-in-law as they continued to eat the large cheesecake she had cooked for them. Following their encounter with the Stacy twins last week, Peter and Mary Jane took time away from work to spend time with each other and May. That entailed time away from Spider-Man, and to his amazement, New York was fine without him throughout the week. In other news from the week, Peter went looking for Sarah after taking her to the hospital. Sarah was put into emergency surgery when they arrived, but issues emerged during the treatment. Her blood loss could not be stopped because her augmented blood rejected the hospital's standard blood bank. Spider-Man took a risk when he offered to transfuse his blood to heal Sarah because their blood types were the same and they were both enhanced. Peter knew Sarah's blood type since he had questioned Gwen about it before her death while they were dating, and she had mentioned having children of their own. Surprisingly, it worked, and Sarah recovered from her operation. But the tranquility didn't last long because when Peter, dressed in civilian clothes, went to see her the next day, Sarah was gone with no trace. He'd be lying if he said he wished Sarah wouldn't return, but he'll wait for her and welcome her into his family, even though she tried to kill him.
Knock knock. May yelled at the door, "Sorry, we're closed," since she needed some alone time with her family.
But May, it's an emergency. As May walked around the counter and out the door, both Parkers perked up, while Mary Jane looked perplexed. Am I missing something here? Remember that guy the first told you about in Boston? The one who found my aunt near Fenway Park. Oh, him? What is he doing here? Peter asked, pointing to the beautiful lunch they were enjoying. Of course, Mary Jane said as she smacked herself on the head. What's his name? You know what? I don't know, Peter realized after a little pause. Never caught it, I guess. May and Naruto's voices could be heard from afar as the former welcomed the younger guy inside to meet Peter and his wife for the first time, even though they were unaware. Sure, May. And I need to use the little girl's room, Mary Jane explained to her husband as she stood up from her seat. Peter cast her a wicked glance. Would you like some company? Mary Jane kissed him on the cheek as she headed to the side bathroom, just as Naruto appeared and waved. Hey there, Peter, Naruto said as he extended his hand. They disengaged as Naruto took the other seat, and Peter took it and shook. Where's your wife? Bathroom. I see, Naruto said as the patron handed him a fork and a plate of cheesecake. Thanks, May. May smiled at him with a grandmotherly nod. You're welcome. Naruto. Peter interrupted the blonde's enjoyment of the delectable dinner. What are you doing here, if I may ask? Naruto pointed to the really large cheesecake he and Mary Jane had been eating. What else? I made a promise to my sisters that I bring them a bunch of May's cheesecakes the next time I visit New York. Just for that? Just for that. Do you want drinks? May inquired, breaking the tense silence in the room. Sure, Aunt May, Peter replied politely, shaking his head. The ninja then saw the male Parker's worried demeanor and posed the obvious question. What's wrong with you, Peter? Nothing, Parker replied curtly, as May slapped his palm for being impolite. Just something rough happened to me recently. Oh? Like what? An old girlfriend issue with her kids. Oh. Are they yours? Naruto inquired, and Peter shook his head. But you want to look out for them, perhaps even adopt them? Yeah, if I'm honest about it, but one of them hates him and child services lost the other. And by lost, you mean she ran away? Yeah, and you want to find her? She's street smart and knows how to hide, Peter said half-truthfully. What should I do? Well, if you can't adopt them or the girl, just keep an open mind and leave your door open for her. Give her help if you can. Naruto replied truthfully. Does she have a name? When Mary Jane returned from her toilet break, Peter's mouth opened to answer his inquiry. Hello there, Naruto. My name is Mary Jane Watson Parker, and it's a pleasure to meet you, she said as she approached the blonde in the store and extended her hand. Meanwhile, the shocked ninja stared at the beauty in front of him, running through many scenarios in his thoughts. If you keep staring at her, you'll meet my fist, Peter warned, half jokingly and half seriously, as the blonde shook his wife's hand. Naruto chuckled uneasily as he reflected on the previous months, especially recent occurrences. His conversation with Mary Jane in Boston as Patronus concerning her superhero husband, her familiarity with May when she was abducted, and Spider-Man's technical knowledge of his web shooters back at the graveyard. Holy crap, Peter's Spider-Man. Naruto, are you okay? May said as she placed another bag of cheesecake boxes on the counter, noting that the blonde had already regained his composure. The Jinchuriki smiled at the pair and offered a little nod. Well, Peter, you certainly have one hell of a wife here, he remarked as Mary Jane chuckled and Peter threw his arm around her waist. And I can see you two are very much in love. We are, Mary Jane confirmed with a kiss on her husband's lips, and I'm sure a handsome man like you will find someone to love as well. Trust me, I've already done it, Naruto said, feeling his thigh quiver. Excuse me for a moment, he said as he pulled out his flip phone, his civilian gadget, and answered the call. Yes. Yeah, I just got it and... What? No, it's already starting. Oh okay, I'm on my way there now. Naruto hung up the phone and looked at the Parkers, who were alarmed by his reaction. Dancing with the Stars finale is on. I'm not going to miss that. Oh, is that on? May inquired of the wall clock. Dear me, we're going to miss it as well. As he grabbed the bag holding delectable products, Naruto left the necessary amount of money. I have to go now. We'll talk later. Bye, Parkers. He raced out of the store after saying his goodbyes. Mary Jane told her folks, I like him. Someone normal for once in our lives. And yet, why was there something familiar with him? Peter pondered before shrugging his shoulders and licking the dab of cheesecake from his wife's cheek. Fortunately for them, May was turned away at the time of the display of affection. But it's people like him and Patronus who make being Spider-Man and Peter Parker worthwhile. He kissed Mary Jane again as May turned around and laughed at her nephew and niece-in-law's affection. Meanwhile, outside the bakery, Naruto stood quietly in his Patronus suit, watching the Spider family get along. His ambition and love for his family push him to be one of the strongest creatures on Earth, and Naruto considers Peter and his family to be the toughest people he's ever met. And if they ever need assistance with Osborne, he'll be there because the villain is now on his watch list. Now to get back home, Naruto thought as he rushed across the roofs for the train ride back to Boston. Normally, he would just shine back home, but after a day with the Parkers, Naruto wants to relax and enjoy the landscape on a train back to Boston's forested area. Naruto sat down in Seiza and basked in the wind pressing against him while the ninja delighted pulling acrobatic stunts between jumps and leaps, the last one landing him atop the leaving train. While he was sitting atop the railway car, the passengers inside the metal box enjoyed pastries and drinks provided by stewards.
A male steward had observed one of the passengers upon boarding and couldn't keep his gaze away from her since. He's never been one to back down when it comes to picking ladies, and he's not about to start now. The steward moved to the seat, clearing his throat, and spotted his prey as his eyes proceeded to strip her. He fantasized about taking her to his home in Boston and grabbed her lovely blonde hair in his hand.
Are you going to give me the water or keep staring at me? The steward blinked as the passengers stared at him in response to the blonde's remark, and he became agitated by their critical looks before turning around with his tail between his legs. The woman, on the other hand, was looking down at the book that was covering the true focus of her attention.
A shot of Patronus wielding his hidden blades in the cemetery on a wet night. Sarah sighed quietly as she glanced out the window beyond her mirror, while her target was admiring the rainy scenery from above the car, the bag of treats hidden behind his robe's protection. To be continued.
That's it for this podcast. Thanks for listening to this video. I hope you did enjoy the story, and if it did, like, share, and subscribe for more. And thank you all for having support, and have a great day.